This year marks the centenary of the Communist Party of China. Do you think there's such a thing as China model? And in what ways do you think this China model can inform perhaps the developing countries?
Well, I think the Chinese government have clearly stated, and it has no intention to export China's model. So from my understanding, China's model is defined as a kind of approach of development with Chinese characteristic. So this kind of achievement based on a very, very important precondition, the Chinese communist leadership. From my understanding, except China, you cannot find any country has this precondition. That means you cannot find any country have a Chinese communist leadership. Without that precondition, I don't think these countries can follow Chinese model. Second, the model is with the Chinese characteristic, means that if that country has no Chinese characteristic, they cannot copy this model.
But no matter how many times Beijing says it doesn't intend to make the rest of the world Chinese, it doesn't want to export its political systems, many in the West simply don't buy it.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And some people think the BRI is an approach to export China's model. Actually, if they examine the BRI project, they will find that first, all of the BRI projects are bilateral rather than multilateral. That's why. That means you cannot make this kind of cooperation multilaterally. So if everything is bilateral, I doubt you can make it universal. And so I firmly believe Chinese model is a very, very special and with the special characteristic. And the question is not whether China want to export it or not. The question is whether other country can copy it or not. Just like you find students and did very good with his exam, but his way to do the exam possibly cannot be copied by anyone else because he do it in a very special way.
Yeah, a lot of uniqueness in the Chinese model.
Is there.
How would you clarify, put into words some of the unique Chinese characteristics that you kept emphasizing?
I think the uniqueness of a Chinese model is that they adjusted the policy or the governance according to the change as quick as possible. And this is really difficult. And because whenever a government adopts a political principle, it's difficult to abandon it or to change it or reform it. But Deng Xiaoping strongly argued that, no, we have to and reform this country continuously, endlessly, according to the change of the objective environment. So I think this is really difficult for other countries to copy. So, like Deng Xiaoping even have a very well-known saying, no matter what the color, white or black, and only catch the mouse is a good cat.
Yeah.
I doubt any other foreign government like to use this metaphor for to guiding their political principle.
Francis Fukuyama wrote an article back in March, lamenting the rigidity of the American system. It's very hard to sell the ideas of the political right to the left.
Yes.
It's very hard to or convince the liberals the right-wing values. Even. Such is the rigidity of the U.S. system.
So once some people ask me, and what's the difference between Chinese concept of legitimacy and Americans' concept? I said that for Chinese, legitimacy, it does not mean the process. It means the result. If you do something good, the result is good. Okay, that's legitimized. But in the U.S., it's opposite. They say, no. The question you have, the process to be legitimized is not the result. For Chinese, they consider you have good process, but then bring us a bad result. So what?
Very different ideologies, very different value systems, I would say. You and your team are putting together the World Peace Forum to talk about U.S.-China post-COVID security cooperation. Tell us more about that. I mean, how do you think COVID-19 will shape global geopolitics, especially when it comes to China and U.S. in the security area?
Actually, the COVID-19 has blocked the whole world and stopped person-to-person's contact. And without a person-to-person contact, the diplomacy cannot achieve its fundamental role. And so now people call this virtual diplomacy, either as a microphone diplomacy or the cold diplomacy. So you find that, and Biden's recent person-to-person diplomacy in Europe achieved some results and make people realize that. And the diplomacy must carry it out with the approach of people to people. You cannot rely on the website diplomacy to settle down the problem or improve the relationship or unite it or consolidate the relationship. And besides that, the COVID-19 also blocked people-to-people's contact at the social level. Without the people-to-people contact, there's no cooperation. That's just we say. We're never talking about the human beings' cooperation with something on the moon because there's no human, right? So now I think the COVID-19 really make the anti-globalization moving forward rather than to push for or resume the globalization.